Good morning, everybody. I appreciate the time that you've had so far at the Keep Indiana Learning Conference. As we know, the keynote went a little bit long this morning, a couple minutes long, so there may be a few people coming in still here for another minute or two as the first official session sort of wraps itself up. Just appreciate you being here today, and hopefully, in the two sessions you've already heard today, that you've gotten a couple of key takeaways that you can bring back to your classroom or bring back to your collaborative process with your own team, and be able to share and do something amazing with that as we look into the next school year, and as we make that leap from what has been a really weird COVID year to what is probably still going to be a much different year than what we've had before COVID, but it's still going to be sort of a neat, I'm going to say, a transition year. I think we've got some opportunities this coming school year that are new as we walk back into sort of a full-scale classroom, I think, in most cases. So hopefully you've gotten something out of it as we look at the next 2 days, this afternoon and tomorrow, that you continue to get a lot out of the sessions that you're attending. I know that Dr. Roos has some great insights today that will hopefully spur some conversations and prompt some questions. And throughout today's session, as you are listening, as you're taking notes, as you're thinking through applications of what you're hearing and how you could use it, you are fully invited to use the Whova platform to record your questions, to ask for the Q&A, and we'll certainly get those questions answered, or to post items in the chat. It's important that you are posting your questions or your Q&A things in the chat in Whova and not in Zoom. If you've joined with Zoom, that's okay, but in the Whova platform, primarily because this platform will be available for the next year, next 12 months, for all attendees to be able to do something with, right? To be able to watch, to be able to share, to be able to revisit, to be able to, again, kind of learn from, and when the moment might be better or might be more optimal, or when, again, the opportunity is available. And so we hope that you'll share those questions and comments in the Whova platform, so that others who are not here with us today will be able to learn from your questions and consider your questions, and ultimately get some takeaways as well, even in that asynchronous format that is going to be available here. So as you have questions, absolutely post those. Looks like there's a couple of questions there already in the Whova platform, and I'll share those with Dr. Roos as we get into the session and as the opportunity comes up for those to be answered or addressed. So my name is Seth Slater. I am the incoming Chief Technology Officer for Northwest Allen County Schools. I am a member of the Keep Indiana Learning Digital Coaches team, and it's been a really cool experience to be part of this team, to be part of this connected group of educators, really kind of not only sharing expertise, but learning from the expertise of others. And again, I'm going to put a plug in for the website, the Keep Indiana Learning website, and Keep Indiana Learning Facebook group. There have been some really great resources shared there over the last 12 months, especially even as summer has gone. And so I hope that you are visiting that site, visiting that Facebook group, or even being a member of that Facebook group, because it is an opportunity. Again, we don't always have the opportunity to go out and see others and join with others and attend conferences in a traditional classroom setting. Some of us who are out of the classroom have those opportunities more than those of you who are in the classroom. And so, certainly, if you've got the opportunity to engage and connect and collaborate with others, absolutely join those and follow those, follow the developments on the Keep Indiana Learning website, both because of the ongoing, often always changing availability of content, but also because of the keyword being free content that is there for us to attend and learn from along the way. So as we hop into today's session, again, I know that Dr. Mellon mentioned it earlier, and I'm sure that others will continue to mention it, but today's it's a 2-day conference, but that doesn't mean the learning has to stop. So definitely use those resources and continue to connect with educators who you meet today and tomorrow, even beyond the conference itself, to make sure that the learning is meaningful and is truly virtually different from what you might get in just a face-to-face, one-off sort of format. Our speaker today is Dr. Rhonda Roos. Dr. Roos has served as a principal. She has served as the director of middle schools at New Albany Floyd Consolidated School Corporation. She is a consultant and a coach, and is a really engaging personality, a really engaging figure to listen to speak with. Just love her voice and the energy that she brings to the conversation. Dr. Roos is a consultant who has served as a coach for principals, district leaders, and school teams. Again, leading schools is very complex work, and so she has a lot of expertise in that, and has, in her past roles as a former director of middle schools, she's gained some experiences that we can all learn from. Dr. Roos's book, The Deliberate and Courageous Principal, will be published in October by Solution Tree, and past honors include the 2010 Indiana Middle School Principal of the Year and the 2015 Indiana University Southeast Educator of the Year. Today's session is The Deliberate and Courageous Principal. Dr. Roos, it's all yours.
Thank you, Seth. Seth, am I still, I'm not muted, am I? I'm good.
You are not muted. We can see your screen. We're all set and ready to go.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Seth. Everybody, welcome to today's session. And it's really my hope, my sincere hope today, that from our time together, you'll be able to pull one thing. Actually, I hope two things, but let's go for one thing that can help you in your leadership as an educator. In difficult days, we're coming through some of those difficult days, but into this year ahead. So I wanted to thank each one of you for attending today's session. For the longest time, I think we had 6 people signed up, and I was talking with a friend, and I thought, I'm just going to make this really small and intimate. But over the last few days, I think we are up to maybe 36 or so. Seth, does it look like we've got that many people in? I can't see.
We have about 18 right now.
Oh, 18. Okay, so that's a nice, good, intimate group. So I know that when I looked at the different roles that some of you have, that we've got teachers in the group today. We have some assistant principals. There was a director of special ed, a director of curriculum named Rhonda. I remember that because there aren't very many of us. A librarian, assistant superintendent, and superintendent. So over this last year, almost a year and a half now, as I've been working with Solution Tree and writing the book, they have been such a help to me. I thought this book or this information would simply be for principals, maybe for principals early in their career. And they have helped me to understand that really, once the reviews went out to several different educators across the United States, that they found a need for teachers who were even thinking about going into the principalship, for assistant superintendents who oversee principals. So that's been exciting with me over this last year to work with a teacher group that were getting their principal licenses. And then I'm currently with an assistant superintendent group as they're working with their principals in their district. So thank you for being with us today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me. I'll skip all the being a guidance counselor and an assistant principal. And I served for 9 years as a middle school principal in New Albany, Indiana, which is as far south as you can go. Scribner Middle School sits right on the Ohio River, and I retired 4 years ago. Well, after I left the principalship, I went to the district office as an assistant sup over our 3 middle schools, which would have been maybe about 4,700 kids. I loved that time there, trying to align the middle schools there together. But the highlight of my career were those 9 years serving as a principal there. This book is about things that I learned along the way and things that I sure wish I would have known when I started into the principalship. So I want to set us up for this real quick. And we've got 10 leadership actions and skills for high achieving schools. 5 of these are deliberate actions or things that from the research we know principals should be doing. maybe the 5 most important deliberate actions that they should be doing. Okay, then I put that on equal playing field with these 5 essential skills, and we call them in the book courageous skills. That's why the title has become the deliberate and courageous principle. So the skills are things that we've seen through different leadership styles of principles, but skills that are absolutely necessary for principals to lead a building. My experience over the last 36 years has shown me that we spend a lot of time on these principal actions, and we don't really give the same amount of attention to the skills of being the very best leaders we can be. So I want to give them equal attention, the actions and the skills, these skills of leadership, building relationships with people, being able to handle conflict. Those skills are absolutely as important as the actions. So there's an author, Patrick Lencioni, if any of you have read part of his books or any of his books, and he talks about organizations, and in our case, a school, must be 2 things, smart and healthy. So when we think of smart, I want you to think about these actions. Are we smart in what we do in the building? Are we competent? Do we have the basic knowledge in order to lead a school? And when we come over here to the other side of being healthy, do we have this skill set to where being a leader, we're not pushing people away from us, but we are rather pulling them toward us to get the really difficult work done, okay? So then it comes down to this question. Do I know what I'm doing? And the other question then that goes along with that is, can I lead people? If I do figure out as a principal that I know what I'm doing, do I have the skills to pull people toward me to get that work done? So I know that we do have several principles on here. And what led me into this research was, for way too many years of my career, I really doubted my leadership, and I wondered, am I doing the right things? Is this what principals in high achieving schools are doing? I knew the PLC model. I had had a wonderful program at Butler University to get my principal's license, but I still questioned myself through so many years of leadership. Am I doing the right things? So I hope that today, let me start speeding down here through some screens. I hope that today you will be able to have that question answered. Here's the work that principals in high achieving schools are doing. Okay, so let's go. That's the big welcome. Okay, here's the screen. What we're going to do in just a few minutes is I'm going to have you tell me which one of these actions you'd like for me to talk about today. And then I'm going to have you tell me which one of the courageous skills you would like for me to talk about. And by the way, Tansy and Lacey, these are 2 people that I know well and have worked with in the past. Thank you guys for signing up. I hope you're out there. So some of this stuff I know you all have heard before. All right, so here are the actions, okay? And I'm going to read these for you only one time. The 5 deliberate actions. Establish a vision story, clarify the work, create your teams to move the work forward, take action instead of being busy, and lead effective meetings. And I'm going to suggest that there are 6 different kinds of meetings that principals should be leading, okay? And then you can see over here on the right-hand side, the 5 courageous skills. Build leaderships, reframe conflict into a very positive thing. Hold people accountable. That's where leaders struggle a lot, from my experience. Lean into the positive, no matter how bad things get, and then turn inward. All right, so here's what we're going to do. You will choose the adventure today. I want you to choose the specific action. Okay, let me go back here again. You're going to determine the path that we take. So there are the 5 deliberate actions and the 5 courageous skills. I'm going to real quick run through some slides just to give you a basic understanding of what I would be discussing on that action or that skill. And then I'm going to ask you to, in the chat room, wherever Seth said that was, out in Hooverland, maybe, okay?
Yep, it's in
You're
Hoover.
going, Okay, you're going to put a number in there. Now, here's where I messed up, guys, and I'm really sorry. Like, establish a vision story. That's number 1. Clarify the work is 2. Okay, create teams 3. Okay, so here we go. Part 1 of the book is going to be deliberate actions. And by the way, I was sitting here last night and got an email from Solution Tree that said, hey, it's up on the website. The cover's not ready yet, but it's up on the website getting ready for pre-orders. It doesn't come out until October, but I literally screamed when I saw my name in the title of the book on the Solution Tree site, and my husband came running up to see what was wrong. But that was a big moment for us last night. Action number 1, you ready? If you want to talk about this one today, I'm going to talk about what the crap is a vision story. Okay. It's not a vision statement. It's not that, not the vision, mission, belief statement stuff that I'm older, but we did those for way too many years. Okay. We'll talk about how to create it, how to use it. Why in the heck do you need one anyway? Why is that such a deliberate action? Okay. Action number 2 is clarify the work. And we're going to talk about things like the principal playbook that you could use as a tool, the systems list to get things in place, and fundamental solutions. Okay, instead of just solving the symptoms of things. Action 3, create teams to really, really move the work forward. In other words, as a principal, you can't do it all alone. I tried that for a little bit. You cannot possibly get all the work done. So we talk about your teams. The 4th one is called take action instead of just being busy every single day. And principals, we can be busy every single day and not really do the important work. Okay. So again, I talk about systems here, a bunch of things about the time in the day, and a tool called the Principal Monthly Guide. The last one is lead effective meetings. And there's a list of the 6 that I would offer out to you. These are 6 meetings that I think principals should run to keep things really moving well. Okay. So those are the 5 actions. Hopefully you got one in your mind. Okay. I'm going to move on. Part 2 on the courageous skills. Okay. You're only going to choose one of those actions. You're going to give us a number. So here are the skills. The first one, build relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about trust, a bunch of stuff about trust, actually. Do you have difficult conversations? I have a model that has really helped me that I would share with you. And then, do you really know your people? Okay. Skill 2. Let's really talk about reframing conflict. I was horrible at this. I was trying to get rid of conflict for several years in my leadership. So I want to totally help reframe that even more so maybe than you already have. So you can see 3 things there about conflict we talk about. Skill 3, hold people accountable. We're going to talk about commitment, getting your people to commit with you. We're going to talk about parallel accountability. Okay, that's the 2 train tracks there running side by side. The principal holds people accountable, but so do the teams of one another. And then we'll talk about 2 different types of accountability if you're interested in that one. Okay. Skill number 4, lean into the positive. So what I've done here, and I hope you can see that little picture. That picture makes me smile every time I see it. I love it so much. But through my 30-some years of leading, based on research, there are 6 different techniques that I have come to love and that have certainly helped me stay and lean into the positive instead of getting wrapped up in all of the negativity. It would be a really hard one to get through all 6 of those, but we'll look at that. And skill number 5, turn inward. That is a complete U-turn in your leadership. And you can see I talk about getting quiet, journaling, and then meeting with a trusted colleague. Okay, now, before you put this in the chat, or maybe you already have, here's going to be my suggestion, okay? I think on the actions, it might be better if we go with action 1 about the vision story, 2 clarifying the work, or probably 4 take action instead of being busy. Okay, 1, 2, or 4. So let's go ahead and put in which action you'd like to do. And while you're at it, let's go ahead and put in which skill. So on the skills, I'm going to kind of nudge you towards skill 1, 2, or 3. 1 was building relationships, 2, reframing conflict, and 3 is holding people accountable. Okay. So Seth, if you want to kind of see what we get coming in from the chat room on the numbers, I'm going to ask everybody else in our group, okay, maybe all 20 of us at this point. I'd like for you also, while Seth is looking over which action and skill you're choosing, I'd like for you to type in there one thing that you think is just the most exceptional thing that a principal could do. This could be a principal that you used to work for, or that you currently teach with, or that's a colleague of yours, or whatever. I'd like for you to type into the chat the one thing that you think is the most important for principals, whether that's an action or whether that's a skill. And I would love to see what some of your comments are. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet for just a couple of minutes. And then Chad, you come on when you've got an idea of the action and the skill for me.
Dr. Roos, will you go back to the list of all of the items so that way people can see?
So sorry, there it is.
No, you're fine.
We number straight down, right? 1 through 5, going straight down.
Yeah, I think this helps.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So once again, on the deliberate actions, I'm going to kind of nudge you 1, 2, or 4. And over on the skills, 1, 2, 3, I think would be easier for us because we're only going to have like 10 to 12 minutes on each one.
We don't have a ton coming in yet, but in terms of the numbers that are popping in, it's a mixture between 1 and 4 for the action. Establish a vision story, I think, has more votes on it currently than take action instead of being busy. So that's the top action right now.
Okay. Okay. Establish a vision story. Got it. I'm going to lean this way and grab it. Okay.
And holding people accountable seems to be the courageous skill that most people are currently asking for.
Okay, and I'm back. Okay. All right. Okay, that's great. Okay, so let me go down here. So I've got action number 1, the deliberate action that we'll talk about is going to be this. Let me get it here. Establish a vision story, right, Seth? That was the one that was coming in. So let's start there. Okay. So I wanted to share a few things before we hit that top question on what is a vision story. Okay. So principals, all of the research, and at the end of this PowerPoint, there's going to be a slide of references and resources, but all of the research, and I'm going to go back to Pat Lencioni's research, and having a strong, healthy organization talks about answering one question, okay, before you can establish your vision story. And that question is this: why do we exist? Now, I didn't do this in my first couple of years of being a principal. I should have. And I tell several stories throughout the book of places where I messed up and then learned and then went back. This is one of them right here, okay? So before you begin to do the work of writing out a vision story, you answer this question with your leadership team. Okay, now we talk a lot more about a leadership team in that 3rd chapter, but you got your leadership team with you, and you go through this exercise of why do we exist as Scribner Middle School or Carmel Clay Middle School or whatever it might be. Why do we exist? I was extremely shocked, you might not be as much as I was, on the different responses that we got from our teachers, our teacher leaders, our counselors, because we went lots of different places on why we exist. We went to create a beautiful, safe, caring environment, to provide a clothes closet for our students, to have the best after-school activities, including clubs for our kids. So we were going all kinds, to have the best teams. Sports were real big in New Albany, Floyd County, and theater arts. So we had, why do we exist? To provide the most electives in theater, handbells, you name it, we had that, okay? These were the types of answers that I was getting back. So it was my job as principal to help guide our leadership team at this point into understanding that all those things were extremely important, okay, worthy ideas, but they were not ultimately the reason that we exist as a school, okay? I know that those of us working together here today, all 20 of us, know that we exist as schools so that students can learn. And so ultimately, we want students to gain a year's growth or more. I would be a big proponent of even more in a year, but at least a minimum of 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, okay? So everything we do revolves around student learning, okay? So the first thing on this action is why, answer the question, why do we exist? All right, now in working with schools over these last 4 years, I wanted to share with you a few of the answers that they had come up with, okay? I've got, we exist, I'm going to leave off the names of the schools. We exist to ensure our students have the highest levels of instruction for their learning and to make certain our kids grow every year, at least 1 year's growth. Another one, we have high expectations for our students' learning, and we accept our responsibility to help each of them reach those expectations. We will adjust our instructional strategies until we see our students make progress. Okay, I love that one because I love the whole responsibility part. And here's the last example I've got. We need to provide an aligned curriculum with challenging, high-quality classroom lessons for all of our students. We will do that, and we will take the responsibility for helping kids reach their goals in a caring school environment. So they threw in there the caring school environment, okay? All right. So that's the initial groundwork that you put down as a principal, okay? Exist, first of all, right? So you understand we can't go into the vision story without doing that part. If you do go into the vision story without doing that part, like I did my very first year, then our vision story had all this other kind of stuff in there, like let's make the clothes closet better. That was a very big one for our staff at the time, and making our clubs better. And now, totally, I agree. The clothes closet was not what it should be. And our clubs kind of sucked. Not good at all. We had definite work to do there, but it wasn't part. Those are systems we're going to create. It was not part of our vision story. Okay. All right. So once you've answered that with the leadership team, okay, you can take this to full staff later in one of those meetings. Then we're going to come into, what is a vision? What's a vision story in the first place? And there's a guy I want to quote here. His name is James Graham. Okay, he has a nonprofit called Heroes Project. And he says, to create a vision that's exciting and compelling, you've got to give yourself the freedom to dream, to use your imagination, to see and feel what does not exist. A vision is not the same as goals or objectives. Those come from your head. A vision story comes from your heart. All right. So what is a vision story? It's where the principal, first of all, writes down 7 or 8 sentences of what she sees the school becoming in a year or two. Okay. Stay that closely in a year or two. That's the vision story. Okay. How do you create one? Well, you create one in using 4 different items through different things that I've read. And so let's go there real quick, okay? We know why we want a vision story, okay, what it is. And I should tell you, why do you want one? You want your staff members to have a very clear idea. Clarity is essential of where the leader of this school wants the building to go in the next year or 2. That's why. It can be very motivating for people. They can see the goals and things that you talk about in your vision story, and then these teachers can set their goals right off of that. So it's very clarifying, it's very motivating, and it allows your teachers within the building to know exactly where the principal thinks this building can be in a year or 2. Okay, as assistant superintendents, I think it's a lovely activity to require every single principal to be turning in, hey, in the next year, and I like a yearly vision story myself, in the next year, when we hit May, this is where we're going to be. Okay, so how do you create one? Well, you think about several different things, but the main things would be this. Let me look at my list here. You can use adjectives in your vision story. You can use numbers in your vision story. You can tell stories, and you can use pictures, okay? So for instance, when I was serving as the principal of Scribner, we had a lot of work to do academically. So I'm going to start here. In the book, I kind of stopped talking about the vision story for several pages, and I say, you must, as the principal, have your academic core in place. You've got to get that up and going. What do we mean by an academic core? Really, the academic core are just the 4 questions from a PLC. You know, what are kids going to learn this quarter? How do we know if they got it? What are we doing for kids that didn't get it? And what are we doing for kids that did have a full understanding, right? So everything in your academic core answers those questions. So for instance, I'm going to assume here that you have a very good, solid, number 1, pacing guide for every subject in each grade level, okay? Here's what we are teaching this quarter, okay? Your pacing guide is a live and breathable document, and people really use it. You got vocabulary on there and maybe resources to use, activities. It's just a great document, pacing guide. You've got your CFAs built, right? So that at the end of each quarter, you'll be assessing throughout that quarter, but you've got a very good common formative assessment, okay? So we said we taught this stuff. Now let's see if kids got it, right? Then, and I see the breakdown in many of the schools that I've been able to work with, it kind of drops off here. Then we look at the data like, boy, kids did not do well on that. And then we just keep going. So it's really answering that 3rd question of, what is our intervention system like? Is it timely and specific? Do we go back and reteach? Do we learn a new instructional technique? This is hard work, okay, for teachers. So they need the leadership here. There's a literacy framework in place that starts in elementary, comes up through middle, on up into high school. I would say at least through that sophomore year, okay? There's a solid math framework. And then if your teachers are using units, you've got a really solid unit program for social studies, science, art, etc., okay? So an academic core, this continual work of making your PLC a legit PLC, okay? That is the work that needs to be done. So now I'm going to come back to the vision story. At Scribner, how do I say that? We had a pacing guide. I don't know if anybody had looked at it for, a long time. And we had some things up in these gray notebooks. I can see them up there, the binders. We didn't really pull them out. We didn't have CFAs. So in my vision story, way back, I'm going, man, at the end of this year, I see us, we're all using our pacing guides. We know exactly what kids are supposed to learn for each quarter. We're using our CFAs. We're looking at the data together. We are setting up intervention plans, intervention spaces. We know what we're going to go back and reteach. So a lot of my vision story was about that, because we needed to get those things created. And then I went from, I don't even want to go into what our numbers were. They weren't great, but we had some numbers down in the 50s. Like, so we're going to go from, this would be all grades together, maybe for ELA, from a 54%, we're going to hit 65. That sounds awful, but I'm going to get us up there. Then the following year on up to 70, 75, till we get up there into the 80s and 90s, right? This was a school of about 65% poverty. Schools in the state of Indiana, that's what I was so lucky to get to do my doctoral research on, middle schools in the state of Indiana on the last year of ISTEP that had 80% or above on math and English and had over 50% free and reduced lunch, okay? There aren't very many of them, 17 years ago. This was in 14, 15. There were only 17 of them, and I went to visit 4 or 5 of them to see what those schools were doing. Bam, we're back to this work right here, okay? So we wanted to be a school with significant high poverty that were achieving at this high level, okay? So we had a lot of work to do, but I put pictures up there on my PowerPoint, you know, and I would say, look at us working together in teams. Look at all these people from all over the state coming to see our middle school because we are doing fantastic things. Our superintendent is coming to go, what's going on here at Scribner with things going well? Okay, so my vision story has 4 things in it, okay? It's got lots of adjectives. We are aligned. We are rigorous in our lessons, okay? Adjectives like that. We're a real team. It's got numbers. We're going to move from here to here. That's very, very important. Some principals feel like, ooh, I hate to put numbers in there. Put numbers in there. Because when you put a number in there, let's go back to maybe, I'll go down 4th grade, okay, ELA, and we say, we're going to try to gain, you know, 5, sometimes 8 percentage points next year. Then every teacher can look at that and do that, name them and claim them. How many kids would that be for me? What needs to change in my instruction, okay? Adjectives, numbers, pictures, and stories. Once again, the principal's vision story is only about 7, 8, 9 sentences, okay? So the last question here, when do you use this thing and why, okay? So you as the principal, write out your vision story, okay? And then you talk to your leadership team. My best advice is in your offsite meeting, you talk to your leadership team, okay? Tell them what a vision story is and that you've written yours. I'd have it right here in front of me, okay? Then I'd give them index cards, big ones, and say, but before I read mine to you, I want to know what your vision is for our school in 1 year. What's your vision? How far do you think we can get? What are some adjectives that you think would describe us, okay? Do that activity with the leadership team. They go out and read all their things. Maybe you throw it up on a whiteboard, etc. After they've read theirs, then you can share your vision story with them, and you may choose to revise yours a little bit, okay? Gaining information from that team. Then you as principal, take that vision story to opening day of school. Seems to be the very best place to use it. Here is the vision for our school for this upcoming year. Okay, I want to show you one more thing. I don't know if this will work, okay, but let me see. I think I can. Let me try not to get a glare on here. Okay, I've used these pens so much with groups that I hope this will work. Okay, last thing on vision story, okay, because, woo, way out of time. All right, so this is one framework, let me turn it a little bit, that I'd love for you to get inside your heads, okay? This is from Peter Singe's work and Robert Hanig, and I think I list them at the end. Okay, this up here would be your vision story, okay? Vision story, if you can see that. And down here, we're going to put current reality. The current reality of your school. Okay, ooh, I see a glare. Sorry, let me try that. Okay, now you want to put under here, this is just for you, maybe with the leadership, all the good things going on in the school currently, and then maybe a little list of, ooh, we got really big work to do, okay? So that you understand exactly what that current reality is, okay? Is that better? So the name of this framework is called Holding the Tension. Here's the vision that you have for the school. Here's the current reality of what it looks like right now. Here's what effective leaders can do. I've never forgotten this. They can hold the tension between these two things. They can hold the tension there, and they can bring this current reality up to the vision. You want to bring the current reality up there to where these things do occur for your school. But here, and you all, it disheartens me to say this, here's what happens most of the time, okay? Oh, I dropped my little eraser. Okay, wait, I'm gonna have to use my little snot rag. Okay, okay, it doesn't go up there. When things get difficult, here's what happens. The principal, the leader, will start to drop that vision, right? You just start dropping the vision. So the current reality will come up a little bit, things start getting hard, and then principals start backing off a little bit. Well, okay, maybe we can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And it's your role, it's your deliberate action to not only develop the vision story, but to hold this tension to bring the current reality up here. All right, so I can't stand that arrow going down. Let's just take it back up here. Okay, this framework is called Holding the Tension, and I love it, and let it be a reminder of where you're going with your building. Okay, I talked way too long about holding the tension, but Seth, I want to be quiet for a second before we go to, what do we say? Oh, holding people accountable. Okay, Seth, what do we got?
Yeah, I think we're good. I do have one question from a superintendent who's curious about principals and leaders. I guess the question is, what do principals need from their leaders? You know, is there something that superintendents can do that will help principals get in? You know, if we're going to talk about the action and the vision story, is there something that superintendents can do to empower principals?
There is so much that a superintendent can do. And that's why Solution Tree had asked me to do work with assistant superintendents. These are in larger districts. Okay, so, and this is on every single one of the actions, and this is on every single one of the skills. There are things that district leadership can do in supporting these principles. So here's what it would be on this. The superintendent writes the vision story for the district, okay? But it needs to be adjectives and details and numbers about each one of the schools within that district, and then the overall district. And then the superintendent and her assistant superintendent requires of principals to follow suit. Maybe if I'm an assistant superintendent, like I was over middle schools, I write my vision story for the 3 middle schools together. We had a lot of work to do. All right. Then I require each of the principals that serve there in the district to write their vision story. You want to see where they're headed, and then give the support underneath that once you know what their vision is. That's a great question. I am so glad you asked. And there are several things like that on each one of the deliberate actions. Seth, say that one more time.
I love that idea. I think that's very powerful. You've got about 15 minutes left, 18 minutes left. Do you want to hop into your courageous skill?
Let's do it. I am such a rambler. Okay, I'm going to go down here. Hold people accountable. Okay, you ready? Let me pull my notes out right here. Okay. I want to start off with a couple of quotes, okay, on this one. If you're not holding your people accountable, then you're holding your school hostage. Hostage to the school's mediocrity and not what the school could truly be. Quit saying, as a leader, as a superintendent, an assistant sup, as a principal, quit saying that you want the very best for your school. If you're not holding your people accountable, you do not truly mean it. Oh, I believe that with all my heart. Obviously, you're going to hold yourself accountable first. So there are 2 excuses that come up a lot. And I'm just going to say, in my years, okay, these are the 2, and I wanted to share these with you on why principals, let's just go to the principal of a school right now, why principals don't hold people accountable, okay? Here's number 1. I just don't have the time, and I also don't have the energy to deal with that situation right now because I'm so busy, okay? That's what we say a lot. I don't have the time. I'm just so busy, okay? That's number 1. The second excuse that I hear a lot is, whatever it is that the teacher has done, maybe not following through on the part of the academic core that's being implemented, but they'll say, that's just the way that teacher is. He's always been like that. Nothing I can do is going to change that behavior. I'm not going to waste my time or any of my valuable initiatives on that. There's nothing to do about that. We're just going to leave that alone. Okay. Which is shocking to me, because what that does is, yes, obviously it harms that particular teacher who's not stepping up, but it also does so much harm to all of the effective teachers in your building who know that, you know, we've committed to do these things. Some of our staff members aren't doing it and nobody does anything about it. So let's get rid of the excuses and come back to, I'm going to stick to these 3 things. Number 1, okay, secure commitment from your staff first. If you want to hold people accountable, okay, make sure before accountability sets in that people know what you expect of them. That's only fair. And I don't think sometimes we as principals have done a good enough job in that. That's back to an action on clarifying the work. So let me think of an example here. Let's go with, let's say, here was a hard one for me. Our elementary schools consensed and came up with a literacy framework that they were using in the elementaries to teach children to read, okay? So our superintendent had said, Rhonda, I want that to go all the way up through grade 8. And I had grades 5 through 8 at the time. All right, so we had to commit that whatever the particular guided group program we were using at a time, there are many that are out there that are good. I understand that we happen to use the Jan Richardson model, okay? So we would all switch to that model for the sake of kids, for the sake of our teachers, so that we could all talk in a aligned system, all right? And that we would take that model all the way up through grade 8, which was very hard for our secondary English teachers. That's what I used to teach. And I want to be very honest with you here. When a child came to me as an 8th grader and didn't know how to read, I did not know how to help them. So this was lovely work. It's some of the most difficult that I had ever done. I had to get commitment from our people. So I had to start with the why are we doing this in the first place? Because we did not want to send students when they left 8th grade to New Albany High School or Floyd Central High School that were not reading at grade level. We knew there would be some, but we didn't want to send the percentage that we were sending, way too many students. So we had to commit. Once we understood why are we going to do this, then I had to give them, here's why, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. So for the 7th and 8th grade English teachers, I'm in there with you. I'm going to learn how to run guided groups, how to boost our vocabulary program and make it much more rigorous. I'm going to be with you in the training. I'm going to learn to do guided groups myself. I'll come into your rooms with you, and we're going to commit that through this next semester, here are the things that we'll do. Okay, that's number 1. Gain commitment from your people. I will say this. I was with a high school principal once, and he was trying to get this literacy up into freshmen and sophomores. We still have children, as you all know that, struggling to read. And he literally, these were English teachers and special ed teachers that were involved in this particular initiative. He literally went around every single person in the room to say, do you commit to this for the next semester? Okay, so he had to lie. Yeah.
Put your shoes on.
Anyway, he had the why and he had the how we're going to do it. And he went around.
Dr. Rose, hold on just a second. I just unintentionally muted you. And I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think I'm good. Is that
yep,
good?
You're good now. Sorry.
Okay. So this principal went around to every single teacher in that meeting to say, do you commit to what we're going to do? Okay, with that literacy model. Now you see what he was doing. It was a beautiful sight to watch. And if they had questions, he'd answered all those before. Every single person in there committed. Now it made it so much easier, although accountability is not easy, to hold them accountable to that, right? We all committed on this date that we would do these things, okay? So that brings us to parallel accountability, right? It's not just the principal holding that group of teachers, and there were about 11 of them in the room, okay? He would hold them accountable. He's going to hold himself accountable and go in and do some of the training with them, etc. But he also expects them to hold each other accountable. Once teachers understand, and I've watched this happen, once they understand, oh, we're committing to this, we're going to do these things, the principal's going to support us, he or she is going to hold people accountable to that, we'll hold each other accountable too and help each other. That's the picture of the dual train track. And then the last thing is, and I know we're at 10 minutes, there are two kinds of accountability. So, listen to me on this. I was very good, if I do say so myself, on quantitative accountability, okay? Quantitative. There are numbers. Like at the end of a CFA, if a teacher were not getting some good results, I felt good and confident, like, woo, what's going on here? What can I do to help you? We had trouble with 7th grade slope. I don't know why, but our kids really struggled on that. So when a teacher didn't make the gains she wanted to, then I knew, let me go in, let's help, let's hold accountable to try to get the gains that we wanted. If a staff member were tardy, okay, this sounds like such a minor thing, but it's not really. If we've all committed that to, I think principals need to have these top 10 expectations. One of those would be, ooh, we're going to be here on time at our spots. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Then the principal must hold people accountable to that. So I had two teachers off of an 8th grade team come to me one year to go, hey, Rhonda, you know, Carol's late and we just hope you'll do something about it. And I was really disappointed in myself because I knew if I was really doing my work as a principal, then they could have held their team members accountable, back to parallel accountability, but I knew I had to do it first. I hadn't seen this teacher coming in late, so I spent about, well, it only took me about 12 days and stood in a different spot each morning rather than doing my morning round. And I was able to document 4 days within 12 that the teacher was late, right? So now I've got my quantitative data. You were late on these days, blah, blah, blah. And then we have a difficult conversation. We're not going to have time to get to that, where I held her accountable to being on time. Okay. The other type of accountability is this qualitative accountability. And I don't know if it's harder for you, but it was much harder for me. And that is where we're dealing with things that you can't put a number to it. For instance, if a teacher is condescending to parents, or if there's, here's a real one for me. There was a teacher that taught in our school that was extremely sarcastic to students. And he would do it maybe in a funny way where, you know, he would just say, I'm just joking, I don't mean it, but saying things that were hurtful. So it took me a couple of years, too many years, honestly, to get my guts up to go to address that and to hold him accountable for, listen, this doesn't feel good to me. I had specific data to say in this situation, and when you said these things, that doesn't feel good to me. It's hurtful to students, and I want you to be aware of that. And then I needed to follow up and hold him accountable to that. So there's quantitative and there's qualitative accountability. They are crucial. I wanted to end one thing there, okay, on this quote. This is from Dr. Steve Gruner. He's a professor at Indiana State University, but he says, the culture in your school is shaped by the worst behavior that the leader is willing to tolerate. And the current culture in your school will not change until the current culture becomes weaker. A culture does not become weaker until the leader holds people accountable. So I want to say that first sentence one more time. The culture is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. So, there's a ton more stuff on that, but I want to stop right here because I think we only have a few minutes left. And let's see, Seth, there are two things I'd like to do here, okay, in our last few minutes. I'd like for you to read, I don't know, 2 or 3 of whatever people put in about the most important thing about principles, okay? And while Seth is reading those, I would like to ask each of you, if you don't mind, to simply put in a few words of one thing from our time together this morning, whether that's about establishing a vision story, or holding people accountable. What's one thing that's just kind of spinning around in your mind that you're thinking about? And then we'll have Seth close us out with a couple of those. So let me also say this. I have a ton of stuff, and Solution Tree has been great to have you write all these reproducibles. But if at any time you would go through those slides and you say, Rhonda, what's a principal playbook? Rhonda, could I have a copy of your systems list? Could I have all of these different things? All you have to do is email me. That's why I hit this last screen. And it is rhonda.bluebird@gmail.com. You email me, just make sure you tell me that you were in this session this morning, and I would be more than happy to share anything I've got. Usually when I'm working with districts or with schools, we spend an entire day on one action. And then that morning, and then that afternoon, I go into the school to really work with the principal to say, okay, how can we get this embedded in your building? So this was quick. All right, Seth, let me pitch back to you, buddy.
Go ahead, and I stopped sharing your screen a little bit ago when you were writing on your whiteboard. So go ahead, just pull open your contact information there here at that last slide. So people do have
I've got that up. Do you see that?
I think you may have to hit share screen to see that.
Hit share screen. Okay, let me go back down a second.
Yeah, there at the bottom, you should be able to share. Perfect. Oh, I'm seeing your desktop right now. So pull open your PowerPoint and you should be able to see it.
Okay. You got it?
Had some great things shared. You know, one of the things that Amy Hardy shared was that, you know, principals should be making decisions based on, you know, what's best for students and making that as the primary
Amy.
focus.
Yeah, good, Amy. Yes.
Eric Danforth says that he liked the statement that culture is set by the worst behavior, you know, that the leader is willing to accept. I can't agree with that more. Even in a non-principal role, I see that as well, you know, from a tech department, just as a departmental leader. You know, we see that too. Rhonda Peterson shared that organizations must be smart and healthy, that really stood out to her.
That really stood out to me too, because you're trying to be competent, and that's why the skills I've experienced from working with principals that were very, very competent, but they didn't have these healthy, courageous skills. Nobody wanted to follow them. So I'm glad that stood out. Okay, what else, Seth?
As an English teacher, I love the statement that, and Lacey Skidmore pointed out too, that the vision story needs to have adjectives and numbers and pictures and stories. It needs to be something that we can visualize. It's more than just a story, It's a vision as well.
Yeah, and Seth, I didn't say this earlier, but on that opening day, the principal literally has, you know, a PowerPoint screen up there with pictures, with those numbers up there, with not the vision story written out in paragraph form, but just the adjectives, the numbers, the pictures, and then they tell the story. Thank you, Lacey. Yes, that's great.
Tansy shares that she loves the idea that principal secures the commitment from her teachers. You're with us or you're not. Get on the bus or get off.
Yes, and Tansy, thank you. I love Tansy. So Tansy was doing some of this difficult work, and Tansy knows that when I began as a principal, I didn't get commitment first. So then it's hard to hold people accountable. But if you're very, very clear and they know why you're doing it, here's what we're going to do, and here's exactly how we're going to do it with all their input, then here's the plan. Here's the next 90 days. I'm holding you to it. And we're all going to commit. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Tansy. Yeah, that's a great part. You got one more, Seth?
I'm looking.
Okay.
I'm looking at a bunch of things right now. So I'm trying to fact.
Okay.
Clarity of expectations to have accountability is mentioned, is again having accountability by understanding exactly what, you know, where that bar rests for expectation. It was shared by Lacey as well.
Yep. And Lacey, just all of the work that we've done together, you know, at SEJ, and I know you're doing that at Seymour now, but that second deliberate action of clarifying the work for people, it plays right into this. What is each teacher in your building supposed to be doing for the next 90 days? We've got to do a better job of that. It's only fair to teachers. Then you get their commitment, then you can hold them accountable and things start flowing.
Do you have anything in closing for your session today? I'm going to share a link. I found your book link. So I'm going to
Did you
throw that
find
up in the
it?
chat.
Oh my gosh, I just found last night. Yeah. So I think you can pre-order if any of you are interested. It doesn't come out until October, but I think I would say this in closing. I don't want leaders to question themselves like I did for so many years, and just know that these deliberate actions with these skills infused in there is the work. It may sound simple, but the work is so extremely difficult to do. But I think, Seth, that we need strong, capable, courageous leaders now, probably more than ever in my experience. So you can do it. And I just am so appreciative that those of you that are still with us chose to do this session today. I know our time's up, Seth. Seth, thank you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Again, I think that this is applicable across the leadership spectrum, not just, in a principal's role. Thank you for sharing your contact information and being willing to respond. Right. That's
yes, you bet. You bet.
Willing to respond to others. There are many thank yous in the chat as well. And again, participants, just remember that there is a survey that has been linked in some of the documents that I know that Lena has shared, and Carrie has probably shared as well. If you would like PGP points or any sort of continuing learning credit, go ahead and fill that out. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now. And these recordings should be placed in Whova within the next 48 hours for those of you who would like to share or, again, take another listen. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Dr. Roos, for sharing.
Thanks.
How do we get the link for the survey? I don't see that coming up. I don't know where that is.
I'm going to take a look here and I will see if I can grab that and throw that in the chat. I'm not sure if Carrie has posted it.